Good morning again. We are taking off again with our series that we've been in, just the heroes of the faith, and we're going to talk about some heroes of the faith. This morning we've been really just, if you're just joining us for the first time, or if you're watching online maybe for the first time, over the past couple weeks we've been talking about just some Bible stories, some Old Testament heroes of the faith. And for some of you that are here, and for some of us that are here, these stories will be familiar. Like, you will remember these stories as a kid. However, there may be some of you that have really, like, hey, I've heard of that name, but I really don't understand the depth of why these people are important and who they were. And so we've been talking about these individuals that were, in fact, real people that lived on the face of this earth a long, long time ago, and how God worked through them and through their circumstances of their day and culture to impact this movement or this plan that God has created from the very beginning. It started with Adam and Eve, and it went on throughout history. And so it's just we've just been kind of going over that. And so the last couple weeks, just to kind of catch you up, if you're just joining us here today, we've talked about Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Esau, and I kind of got the cart a little bit in front of the horse. So today we're going to do a little bit of a prequel for those stories. And I figured if Star Wars can do it, we can do it. So we're gonna go back and do a little bit of a prequel from a chronological standpoint, and we kind of skipped over a hero that's really, really important, and his name is Noah. And some of you are like, okay, I know this story, so don't check out already, because there's going to be some elements and part of the story. Now, I do want to give just, if you're a parent here with young ears, there are some elements in this story that are probably a little PG-13. So I just want to give you a warning of that, and we're going to be talking through some of those things. So it might be a great idea. Great job, Becky. There's a good parent right there. I love it. There's a little bit, I just wanted to warn you ahead of time. So there's some elements in our Old Testament stories when you read through them in the Bible that are pretty okay. That's interesting. And so we're going to hit some of those things, and we're going to talk about Noah this morning, and really just talk about some of those. I just want to kind of give those parents a little bit of a heads up right out of the gate. Like I said, some of these stories and there may be elements of this story that you think you know, or things about it that you think you know growing up. And even for me, as I was reading back through that, I was like, I'd forgotten that, or I didn't realize that happened. Or, it's kind of some of the conversations we've been having at Grace XP on Sunday night is like, when you start digging into the Word and you start reading some of these stories again, it's like, wow, why did God do that? Why did this happen the way it did? How did God work in these circumstances? And I think I will tell you this too, before we kind of jump into this morning. When we go through these stories and we talk about these heroes of the faith, it's really, really easy just to focus on the character. And we're going to talk about Noah, and it's really easy just to focus on the character. But I want you to pay attention. I think by reading these stories and the relationship, we get a really good glimpse of who God is. You get a good indication of who he is and his nature and how he interacts with his creation. And so if you're wondering about who God is, and I think it's easy for us sometimes to have, somebody told me once that if we were all artists and we could draw a picture of God, and it was good, that all of our pictures probably would look different. Because I think we have an individual personal relationship with God, or you have a preconceived idea about who he is. And sometimes we see God as, especially in the Old Testament, right? We see God as wrathful, and he's a jealous God, and he has zero tolerance for sin. And all of that is still true. But I believe we also get a picture of a God that is incredibly patient and incredibly faithful. And one of the other elements that I get, especially from this story, is that he's not looking for perfect people. He's just looking for people who are obedient and who are willing to walk through difficult things and trust him in that. And so he's very, very consistent with the people that he uses. And there's this really, really important figure that emerges not long after creation. He's a direct descendant. Noah is a direct descendant of Adam, which really we all are, right? Because Adam was first. But today we're talking about a man. You think of Noah, and I don't know what images you get of Noah. Like you get, the baby room with the cute little animals in their heads sticking out the ark, and like, oh, that's Noah. I love Noah. There's some messed up stuff about this story. Like you're decorating your baby room with Noah in it, and it's Noah. And actually, I mentioned earlier that I got in trouble with my wife because she was planning on having family worship in here today, and she's like, "Oh, you're talking about Noah? That'll be great for the kids, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, not so much. Probably not." And the more I thought about it this morning, I'm like, I was rereading through some of my scripture. I'm like, yeah, maybe a good idea. So Cheryl's like, you tell me that at 7:30 on a Sunday. So anyway, it was a quiet ride to church this morning. Anyway, so the first part of this, and we begin to get this picture. It's not long after creation. The world is brand new. God created the earth, heavens and the earth, and it just really is grand new. And so, is it me, or does the world seem really, really crazy to you right now? The world has lost its marbles, or at least our country has. I think some of the people in the rest of the world are looking at us going, what's going on? They are cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs in America. And there's things that I watch. Cheryl and I were just talking about it this week. I'm like, are you kidding me? I can't even believe we're having this conversation. And the stuff that's happening today in our world, 15 years ago, if I would have said, hey, this is what 15 years from now, this is what we're going to be talking about, you would have looked at me like I was insane. Because we just didn't think, and the world is, I don't know, it's easy, and I don't watch a lot of news, I try to stay away from it, but sometimes just some things that just make absolutely no sense, and at the time that Noah lived, it was brand new, and it really didn't take long after creation for humans and our sin to mess the world up. It was a really, really dark, messed up situation in the time of Noah. And we're gonna dive into the passage in Genesis here, so here's what it says. I'm just gonna jump right into it. It's interesting, and when we read this first part of the scripture, I wanted to give you just an indication of what the world was like. I think we hear the story of Noah, and God sent a flood, and for some of you know that, destroyed the earth, and like, why would God do that? Were we really that bad? Yeah, they were really that bad. And there were some things happening, some interesting things happening between the heavenly realm and the earthly realm. And not too long ago, I preached a message on the kingdom of heaven. Jesus talked about it a lot. And I think we get so caught up in this world that we live in that our focus is just here. And we don't give any attention. Ephesians 6 says that we are battling against principalities and evils of unseen world. And I think sometimes we just don't like to think about that, but we're not alone here. There are powers and evil and work at force in our lives and in America, and that's what was happening in the day of Noah. And here's what it said. I want to give you just an indication. And some of you, this may be new to you. You didn't realize this happened, but some of you know where this is going. But I wanted to give you a picture of really this world gone crazy. And it's in Genesis. We'll start here in Genesis. I think it's in chapter 6. I forgot that in my notes. But verse 2. The sons of God saw the beautiful women and took any they wanted as their wives. Now, I want to stop here because I want you to understand who the sons of God were. Now, there's a lot of debate about who this scripture is referencing, but I think there's a common understanding in theological circles that the sons of God in this passage are referring to either fallen angels or demons. Okay? So they are heavenly bodies, fallen angels or demons that are interacting with God's human creation. Okay? I'll give you a picture of this. So just bear with me. Here's what it says. The sons of God, so these fallen angels or demons or there's a general consensus, saw the beautiful women of the earth and took any that they wanted as their wives. Then the Lord said, my spirit will not put up with humans for such a long time, for they are only mortal flesh. In the future, their normal lifespan will be 120 years. So God said, hey, I'm about done with this. And it goes into detail kind of a little bit about what was going on in the day of Noah. It wasn't good. Here's what happened in verse 4. And so God at that point in time said, hey, back when God created the earth, people lived for a long time, and God said, nope, after this, 120 years, that's it. We're shrinking this. In those days, and for some time after, this is verse 4, giant Nephilites lived on the earth. Now, some of you are going, what's a Nephilite? Some of you know what a Nephilite is. Some of you may have read this and remember this. Some of you, the first time you've ever heard this. Giant Nephilites lived on the earth. For whenever the sons of God, or these fallen angels or demons, had intercourse with women, they gave birth to children who became the heroes and famous warriors of ancient times. So in other words, these fallen angels were having relations with women, human women, and they were creating this offspring that was a giant race that were often the enemies of God. There's a lot of speculation around why they were doing that, and what I have read is they were trying to pollute the human bloodline to keep the Messiah from coming. That was kind of their intention, or some believe that may have been the intention. The Lord observed the extent of human wickedness on the earth, and he saw that everything they thought or imagined was consistently and totally evil. So the Lord was sorry he had ever made them and put them on the earth. And I love these last few words. It broke his heart. So here we have this picture. We have this image of this weird relationship, this perversion that was taking place in culture at the day of Noah. And God just said simply, I'm not going to tolerate this. And God is grieving. He is sorry he ever made these people. Now, he's not sorry because he made a mistake, because God doesn't make mistakes, right? He's brokenhearted because God gave his human creation the freedom to choose between right and wrong, and consistently over and over and over and over again, humans chose wrong. They chose sin over God. When you choose sin over God, it grieves his heart. So we get this picture of God that's like, you're gonna get a picture of the wrath in this story, but you get a picture of God's broken heart. That he's a God that is vulnerable to a broken heart. And what breaks his heart is when we choose other stuff and power and prestige and whatever these humans thought that they were going to get by these ridiculous relationships, and by disobeying everything that God had told them to do. We just choose our own path. And we ignore the rules of God has put in place for us, and we really don't fear God's wrath. And I think there's an undercurrent of that in our society today. I think there's a lot of people that just don't fear God anymore. And back when I was a kid, I thought I was going to hell every week. Like, I rode these altars like an Indian pony when I was a kid, because I thought I was going to die and go to hell. And I think there's this message of grace that you often hear from the church, especially in the modern church. But let me just tell you, there's a message that's different. God will not tolerate your sin. You think he will? He won't. He cannot operate in the same realm of it. It breaks his heart, but he will not tolerate it. And it gives us a picture. Proverbs, the writer of Proverbs, gives us a reason. Here's what Proverbs said. For they hated knowledge, and they chose not to fear the Lord. It's a choice. They rejected my advice and paid no attention when I corrected them. Therefore, they must eat the bitter fruit of living their own way and choking on their own schemes. I don't know where that hit you this morning. They hated knowledge, and they rejected the advice. I can't tell you the number of people I've talked to them about some of the sin in their life because I have that kind of relationship with them. They just continue to do the sin. Like, well, I don't think God's gonna. Yeah, he will. His word is true. And there needs to be a healthy amount of fear with him. He was grieved in his heart to see how far humanity had fallen from what he originally had planned. Let me read verse 7 again to you again. And the Lord said, this is verse 7, I will wipe this human race that I have created from the face of the earth. Yes, and I will destroy every living thing, all of the people, the large animals, the small animals that scurry on above the ground, and even the birds of the sky. I am sorry I ever made them. So God made a decision at that point in time in history to go nuclear. He pushed the button. I've seen enough of this evil. I'm going to wipe it clean. Now, that's exactly what he started to do. There's a phenomenon that happens around this area of the country in like January, February time, and it's the pending snowstorm alert. Have you ever noticed that? And people begin to prepare for the storm. Have you ever noticed that? No bread, no milk. I saw the bread guy one time, the last anticipated snow. I felt sorry for the guy. Like he was being mobbed, getting out of his truck. Like, I don't know. There was this, like when there's a storm coming, we tend to prepare around here. Like we're going to be snowed in for months. God actually found somebody and gave him a little bit of a heads up. He gave him a warning. And here's where we see Noah enter the picture. I love the 7 words. So I just read you verse 7 of chapter 6. God said, I'm going to wipe this off. I'm going to kill all the animals. I'm sorry I ever made them. And then the very next verse, verse 8, here's what God says. But Noah found favor with the Lord. One guy out of all of creation. God looked down and said, this guy gets it. He's paying attention. Here's what we know about Noah. Chapter 6, verse 9. Noah was a righteous man, the only blameless person living on the earth at that time, and he walked in close fellowship with God. Now, there is so much we can unpack right there in that verse. How closely are you walking in fellowship with God? Do you think you would have made the ark? Or would you have been on the outside? Would God have looked down and said, hey, that person's righteous? Noah was the father of 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Noah was the one guy in the world that God could count on. He wasn't necessarily anyone that was amazing. We know a little bit more about him. We know that he became a farmer later in life. He grew grapes. What we do know about Noah was that he was incredibly obedient. And so God gave him a God just said, hey, build an ark. And it may have sounded something like this. I think we have a video. It may have this call to Noah. It probably went something like this if we have a video, maybe.
So you're really him, aren't you?
You want more proof? I haven't done the pillar of salt thing in a while.
That's all right, I believe you. I don't understand why you chose me.
You want to change the world, son. So do I.
What? Why an ark? I mean, that's like flood territory. You wouldn't do that again. You wouldn't do that. Would you do that?
Let's just say that whatever I do because I love you.
Well, then you have to understand that this whole building an ark thing is really not part of my plans here. I need to settle into my house. I need to make a good impression at work. What?
Your plans.
What are you talking? We're talking about an ark, right? I mean, an ark? An ark is huge. I don't even know where I would begin.
Al, I hear that a lot. People want to change the world, don't know how to begin. You want to know how to change the world, son? One act of random kindness at a time. Build the ark. I'll tell you what, you build it, I'll fill it. And if anybody asks, tell them flood's coming. Oh, and you might need this.
Okay, so what do? I grab the wood and then... Oh, okay. You know, that's just cruel. Do you see him? I don't see him.
Building an ark the old-fashioned way. God is the creator of the heavens and the earth. He lives in all things and has over 6,700,000,000 children.
God said, build an ark. It's exactly what he did. Genesis chapter 6, verse 22. So Noah did everything exactly as God had commanded him. Noah just got to work. He was just obedient, even when he may not have understood why. He didn't start and then give up. He didn't give God advice on how he should build the ark. And we often love to share our plans. I love that part of that clip. You know, hey, well, here's my plans. And God's like, your plans? He just got to work building this ark. Let me ask you something. Has God ever asked you to do something absolutely crazy that made absolutely no sense? He has me. Have you been willing to step into that? What if Noah's like, yeah, listen, that's just not me. I'm not an art builder. I don't have that talent. I don't have that gift. I don't know what I'm doing. I really probably ought not do that. What if Noah would have dug his heels in and said, you know what, God, I can't, it's just not me. I can't do that. What would happen? But God knew he could trust Noah, and he just got to work. I have to think that sometimes maybe it was exciting for him. I don't know. Have you ever started a project and it's kind of exciting? I remember, and you start preparing and you think, oh, this is going to be an adventure. This is going to be fun. Like I remember when Cheryl and when I volunteered Cheryl to hike the Wind River Range in Wyoming, and she was not happy about it. I was super excited. Like I was trying to, I built a spreadsheet on how much stuff weighed, so I knew how much to put in my pack, and it was kind of exciting. I was excited to go on this trip, and you get on this, you get the preparation, and so maybe there was some excitement in it. I love a good project every now and then, and Noah's like, maybe this will be fun. I'm going to build a giant boat, it'll give me something to do. Took him 100 years to do it. Talk about dedication. And sometimes when we're starting a new adventure, it's fun. But then we get on the adventure and we find out that it's a little bit harder than we think. But Noah was prepared. He was making preparations. He was preparing for the storm that God told him was coming. What kind of preparations are you making? And we're going to get into the storm that's coming later. There's a storm coming. Another one. What kind of preparations are you making? So you prepare for the flood. And then I think the second thing you do is you have to endure the flood. I remember when I was in probably junior high, maybe, my parents thought it'd be a great idea in the summer to take us to Minnesota and go fishing on some great lake up there, walleye fishing. That was my dad and my grandpa's dream, and I remember getting ready for this trip. We got our poles and all this, and they were taking me and Farron, and it was me and Farron and my dad and my grandpa were going on this fish. So we chartered a boat when we got up to Minnesota. I don't even remember whatever Great Lake it is, huge lake. It was the middle of July. It was absolutely freezing. Don't go north of here. It's just not worth it. Froze to death. The seas were angry. I could hear the song Edmund Fitzgerald playing in the background. It was awful. Like the front, I can't believe they even took us out fishing that day. The front, we were sitting on the front of this boat that we had chartered, and it would go up. The waves were so tall, you would go up and see nothing but sky, and then you would come down, and this giant wave would come over the bow, and we were soaking wet. It was freezing to death. My grandpa went into the bathroom on the boat, and just stayed in there. People were banging on the door. He's like, I'm not coming out. Miserable. I could not wait to get off of that boat. It was awful, awful time. And I've never been, it was some of the coldest I've ever been in my life. And God gave Noah about a week's notice before the water came. He'd been working on this boat for 100 to 120 years. It took him that long to build it. And here's what God said in Genesis chapter 7, verse 4 through 5. 7 days from now, I will make the rains pour down on earth, and I will rain for 40 days and 40 nights until I have wiped from the earth all the living things I created. So Noah did everything the Lord commanded. We see a theme in Noah's life. Whatever God tells him to do, I just do it. About a week before these floodwaters came, he gave him a notice and said, hey, time to round everybody up. Let's get on this boat. Now, here's some things to consider. Noah wasn't just obedient in the beginning. He was obedient throughout every step of this process. Build an ark, round up your family, get on the ark. And here's some other interesting things, like what he had to endure. You think about that, and I know you think, okay, there were people hurling insults at him. Now, here's something interesting. Did you know that's never in the Bible? I grew up thinking, oh, wait, I've heard that story my whole life, and I thought people were, oh, no, you're an idiot, building a boat. It doesn't say that anywhere in the Bible. Probably happened, but it doesn't say that. He just endured. Noah showed endurance and committed to God's plan. It took him 100 to 120 years. The floodwaters came and covered the earth. 150 days. But they estimate that Noah was on the ark for more than 365 days. He'd had this adventure. He probably was excited about it and like, okay, it's go time. Here comes the water. Get on the boat. Let's ride this out. There was probably a little bit of, sorry, everybody else is dying, but we're on the boat, so we're okay. All these animals, got everybody rounded up on the boat. And then I got to believe about 6 months into that boat ride, they were like scooping animal poop and probably smelled awful. Time to do the chores. I got to go feed the elephants today. I got to go feed all these animals. And sometimes in life, you're just enduring the flood. You've been obedient up to this point in time in your life. And you're just in the middle of the flood. And it's a grind. Every day the same. Nothing super exciting for Noah. All he could see was water in every direction. Have you ever been in the middle of the ocean like that? Anybody? If you've ever been in the middle of the ocean and it is an eerie feeling. My dad would take us fishing a lot when we would go to Florida. And one time we chartered a boat and went 100 miles offshore on this boat. And I remember sitting out there going, man, if this thing goes down, we're in trouble. That's going to be a long swim. And it's weird. I can't explain it. It's an eerie feeling when you cannot see land in every direction and you're on a little fishing boat. They get up, they ride the ark, they feed the animals, they scoop poop, they take care of his family. There's probably family tension. Can you imagine being on a boat for over a year and a half with your immediate family? We would kill each other. I scooped the poop yesterday. I don't care. I can't get there. I can't get my kids to feed the dogs. Probably at each other's throats. Here's the thing. Sometimes you're waiting for the storm to be over in your life, and you just have to keep grinding. And some of you I know sitting in this room are in that phase. You're just existing. And maybe God did something really cool a long time ago or once upon a time in your life, and you were obedient, and you weathered the storm, and you're looking for land. But I just want to tell you, God hasn't forgotten you. And you're ready, and you're waiting for what God has for you next. And I just have to believe that Noah every day climbed to the top of that ship and looked out and thought, man, can I see some land? And if you know the story, he sent out doves every day because I'm telling you, he was probably desperate to get off that boat. I don't know what you got going on in your life. Maybe it's an actual storm or a period in your life. Maybe it's a divorce or death or grief or a diagnosis or a financial strain or whatever you're weathering right now. You're in the middle of the storm. I'm going to just tell you, God sees you on the ark. And he will sustain that. He will sustain that. After the flood waters receded, and Genesis 9 tells us that God sent a rainbow, and it was starting over, and everything was new for his family. Everything was different. The world had changed. He had prepared for the storm. He had weathered the storm. So what do we do after the storm? You start over. And I'm telling you what, if there's ever a guy that deserved a rest, it was Noah. He built a flippin' ark, loaded up a bunch of animals, took care of them for over a year, and when he got off, and I got to believe when he stepped off to maybe that muddy, sloshy piece of ground that he landed on Mount Ararat, he was like, whew, I'm tired. And I think we see these heroes of the faith, and I think sometimes when we get off and we've been serving maybe our whole life in the church or around this place, or maybe you've served in children's ministry a long time, or maybe you've served and you're like, man, I just need a break. I think that's kind of where Noah was. And here's another interesting, weird part of Noah's story, but I think we can learn from it. I mean, after all that he endured and after all that he experienced in the hand of God and all of that, you would think Noah would have been like, okay, I am bought in. But I think he just let his guard down for a minute. Here's what happened in Genesis chapter 9, verse 20 and 21. We're about to wrap this up. After the flood, Noah began to cultivate the ground. He became a farmer. He's like, okay, listen. Man, that sounds cool. I'm just going to go grow some stuff and chill out for a minute. And he planted a vineyard. Next verse is kind of funny. Not really funny, but one day he drank some wine that he had made, and he became drunk and lay naked inside his tent. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever gotten drunk and laid naked in your tent? Don't answer that. Don't raise your hand. My point is, he was a human. I think sometimes we look at these characters and we're like, okay, these guys never did anything wrong. They always got it right. Okay, heroes of the faith, woohoo. I'm no hero of the faith, Trent. Believe me, you know what I did last night? Some of you actually may have gotten drunk and laid naked in your tent. I don't know. But my point is, God doesn't look for people that are perfect. Even Noah had a moment had a moment of failure. Kind of impacted his family. Read the rest of the story. It's really interesting. Just because you've had a moment of failure, God is waiting to brush you off and bless you and continue to use you. Really quick, I've got a few more scriptures just to share, and I'm going to go through this quickly. Jesus, in Matthew 24:36, said this, and I've never been a big end-of-the-world prophecy guy. I'm not like a doomsday prepper. But where does this hit us today? This story. What do we get from it? What kind of message does it have for us and our culture and the church today? Jesus said this, however, no one knows, this is Jesus in Matthew chapter 24, verse 36. However, no one knows the day or hour when these things will happen, about Jesus coming back, or even the angels in heaven or the Son himself. Only the Father knows. Jesus told us in Matthew that nobody's going to know when he's returning. And even though we may not know the exact time that Jesus will return, Jesus did give an indication in Matthew of what our culture is going to be like. And here's what he said really quick, Matthew 24, verse 37. When the Son of Man returns, pay attention, it will be like the days of Noah. In those days before the flood, the people were enjoying banquets and parties and weddings right up till the time that Noah got on the ark. Noah entered the boat. People didn't realize what was going to happen until the flood came and swept them away. That is the way it will be when the Son of Man returns. Those are Jesus' words. People were caught unaware. People were consumed with their own kingdom versus the kingdom of heaven. And Jesus said it's going to be just like that when he comes back. Now, I've heard that my whole life, and some of you have too. But I believe that he's coming back. Here's what Jesus recommends that we do. Matthew 24:45. A faithful, sensible servant is one whom the master can give responsibility of managing his other household servants and feeding them. That was Noah. Will it be you? Are you a sensible servant? Are you so laser focused on your retirement or what you're going to do tomorrow or what kind of vacation plans you have or what kind of junk you have going on? Are you so laser blinder focused on this kingdom that you don't see the other kingdom? Because if you don't see the other kingdom, you need to. It's a real deal. And I don't want us just to be, people were just basically living life. They were partying. They were planning weekends. They were having a wedding. I did a wedding yesterday. It was just normal life. Noah was prepared for the storm. My question to you is, are you? Jesus is coming back. Are you a sensible servant? Are you obedient? Because he was prepared, he was able to endure some difficult things. Let me ask you this. How are you holding up under life's pressures? Are you allowing God to strengthen you while you're enduring the storm of your life, or are you just ready to quit? A lot of people have quit church these days. They've just quit. Is it okay to rest for a period? Absolutely. But don't let your guard down, because you'll have a moment that you don't expect. God still wants to use you. He still has a plan for you despite your moments. I just want us to be prepared. I want us to be sensible servants. This message, this story spoke to me deeply this week. And I hope it does to you. Stand this morning. Father, thank you so much for your word, this message of Noah. And sometimes, Lord, we just get caught up in, he got on the ark. But there was a moment in which he was living in a culture where I don't know if it's like it is now in the time of Noah, but it sure feels like it. Father, I just pray that we would be focused on your kingdom, that we would be listening for your voice. And Lord, whatever God is prompting us to do, help us not to dig our heels in. And even though we can't see 10 steps ahead, Lord, maybe we only need to see what's right in front of us. Lord Jesus, I just pray that you would help me to trust you. Father, I would just pray this morning that you would speak to someone across this room. And Lord, whatever God is speaking to their heart, whatever you're speaking to their heart, Lord, I just pray that they would be a sensible church. That, Lord, that we would be people, men and women, that are found faithful and righteous. Someone that you could depend on to be obedient, even in the face of difficult times. Help me. I know there are people here, Lord, that are enduring the storm. They've been obedient to this point in their life, and now they're facing something that's really challenging, that's really difficult. They can't see how it's going to end. But Father, I know that you can sustain us in that time. And Father, maybe we're at a point in our life where we've kind of walked through some of that period already, but Lord, help us, and I feel like we just want to rest and we want to just take a break for a minute. Help us not to get complacent in that rest. And help us continue to be seeking your will, Father. Thank you for this word this morning. Thank you for your servant Noah that gives us such a great example how to be obedient. Help us not to be defined and bound by the missteps that we've made in life, the sin that we've created. Help us to continue to seek your faith, and seek your forgiveness and grace in our lives. Thank you for that grace and your love for us. Lord, I just pray that you would challenge us to be laser focused on your kingdom this week. Help us to see through our kingdom to see yours. Take us from this place, but not from your presence. In such a morning. Amen. Thank you for being here. Have a great week.